This is Believe in Vikings, and I guess Sal Spice is not joining us tonight, but we're going to be just fine. We got Bryant McKinnie. He won a Super Bowl with the Ravens in 2012. We got Raun Sawh. We're going to go through some of the Vikings roster battles because cutdown day is Tuesday afternoon. And we've done this show for a few years now, Bryant, and I wanted to get a refresher. Now, you never personally, I don't think, were ever on a roster bubble. But when there are guys at training camp, whether your teammates or your friends, can they feel the heat around this time on the calendar about, gosh, am I going to make it or not?
I think some people get nervous. I remember Jeff Dugan got nervous every year and had like a tradition that he did. Sat in the same chair or something around that time or day. Some people just get nervous because they're just unsure where they are.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes with, I feel like, based off dialogue with coaches and things like that, not really tell them how they feel about them. But yeah, a lot of guys can get nervous because it's like either you make the team, you don't, or your career is over in the NFL, or you find another team. So you just kind of out there for a minute, just trying to figure it out.
Yeah, the Vikings have 91 players actually right now with the junior Aho from the international program. So they'll go from 91 to 53. The deadline is Tuesday. And so 38 guys will not make the roster. About 14 will be on the practice squad, and it will be a lot of movement around the NFL. So there'll be, quite frankly, hundreds of free agents, and, teams can use that to get better. So, Ron, what I want to start with is go through some of these roster bubbles. I've got ones that I consider bubbles. You're certainly welcome to tell me if you think it's not a bubble, but I'll start at the top of the roster. I think arguably Jaren Hall, quarterback, 5th rounder from this last draft, is a roster bubble guy because Kirk Cousins and Nick Mullins are shoo-ins. Do you think Hall makes it on the active roster, Ron?
I think he does. Just with the new rule changes especially with having that third quarterback, the ability to activate them for the game, just in case anything happens. I think a lot of teams you'll see carry the third quarterback that usually don't. So obviously we'll have Kirk as the vet, and then the Nick Mullins as an experienced backup, and then kind of your flyer of we'll see if we can get him developed throughout the year, let him practice, and also I think Kevin O'Connell today had high praise of him as the scout team quarterback. So they may use him in when we play, the Eagles and have him replicate that Jalen Hurts role and that type of stuff. So there will be value in that, and I think the extra quarterback allowed on roster is what's going to keep him here.
I believe that he'll ultimately make it because it's way too easy in this league to snatch a guy off a practice squad. And so any player, not just Hall, that ends up on usually 14 players on the practice squad, it's pretty easy to say for an NFL team to say, you know what, I'm going to take that guy. And I don't know, even though Hall hasn't looked like gangbusters right away, I don't know if they want to let him slip out the door that easily. Brian, do you like the new quarterback rule, or have you heard of it?
I haven't heard of it.
Okay, well, this kind of is a blowback from the NFC Championship when the 49ers were out of healthy quarterbacks, and they basically had to just do a bunch of handoffs during an NFC Championship game. They're designating a roster spot league-wide for a third quarterback on Sunday. So normally they'll have one. They usually have to deactivate a number of players, and now they can keep an emergency quarterback for any situation, really. And the Vikings usually only have 2. So does that sound like a reasonable plan?
Well, I guess they're being proactive because they've seen something happen, in the past. So it's like to give, teams kind of a chance to get through a game. Yeah, I don't know how that'll go, but I don't see it happening too often. We have to go through all 3 quarterbacks either, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I like it in its purest form. Ron, you probably think it's a little watered down like I do. Like it counts against the 53-man cutoff. So that's a little strange. And then it has to be a quarterback. It can't be a hybrid. And then I think it's almost like baseball. Like once he's in, he has to stay in. It feels like he's like a bullpen. And so there's a lot of little.
Well, it's actually
go ahead.
There's a little confusion in that, but I heard them talking about it. So it's not that once he's in that he has to stay in. but there's something where if or out of the two guys in front of them, if they get hurt, only one of them is eligible to come back.
Okay.
So it has to be like medically a complete medical reason. It can't be play wise, like, oh, this guy's not playing well, we're gonna go to the third guy, but the first guy went out with concussion and now all of a
Okay.
sudden he's back in. It's strictly injury related, and if they get cleared, only one of them then can come back.
Okay. So, I mean, there are some caveats to it where the reason I think it's a little bogus is because it counts against the 53, and I understand, I guess that has to happen. So the takeaway is on Sunday mornings when they announce deactivations, they can skip that for Hall or whoever it may be at QB3. I think that's the distinction. Does that sound correct?
Yeah, so instead of the normal 46, you get that 47 player.
Cool. Okay. All right, let's go into some of these running backs. This room has taken on a new form over the past month in training camp. We thought it was a pretty deep room. It probably still is, but I would say that Kene Nwangwu and Dwayne McBride are on the roster bubble. Ron, if you assume Abram Smith and Aaron Dykes won't make the team, maybe Aaron Dykes does make the team, but what are your thoughts on Nwangwu maybe hitting the IR, not making it at all, and Dwayne McBride?
So I think it's interesting because I think Wang Wu's value is now lower in the sense that because he was such a good kick returner, and it seems like the NFL is just doing everything they can to get rid of that play in general, which is kind of dumb. And who knows what the injury is, but I think he has obviously the upper hand because he's had the experience in the NFL, even if it's just as strict as a kick returner. I think McBride, I would have liked to see a little bit more of him to this point. I think they're going to try to sneak him out of the practice squad, and I think that's one of those where every team. And it's nothing against Dwayne McBride, and it's nothing against the running back positions. It's just I think there's so many talented guys. I think every team has a Dwayne McBride that they want to get to the practice squad. So that's a position that'll be less likely that gets plucked. And then you can stash a guy there. And then I think it opens it up where they'll bring in a veteran. They've been working out a lot of guys, whether it's Kareem Hunt or, who's the old guy from that's bounced around the league, Mike Davis or whatever. Yep. Like they seem to have their feelers out there, and I bet they're just waiting on one person or a veteran to get cut that can step in and carry the load as needed.
Bryant, from your playing days, did the guys that were on the practice squad, were they just as much a part of the team during the week as everybody else?
Yeah, it was definitely no separation.
Okay.
Definitely played a big part of the team, gave us our looks, and all treated and looked at the same.
Okay, yeah, I that's what I thought the answer was, but they always seem to have just like a separate spot in general on the roster.
The only thing is they don't travel, I think, to certain games or stay in the hotel, home games, but they come. But other than that, no, they're everywhere else for the most part. Yeah.
Cool. All right, Ron.
And back when you played, or sorry, Dustin, when in your time the practice squad, it wasn't as fluent as it is now, or fluid, I should say, where it seems like every week you get the fourth tight end that they're signed from the practice squad, or it seems like there's a lot of up and down. Were there limitations back in your day where once you're called up you have to remain on the active roster, or were you allowed to kind of go up and down like a minor league baseball team?
Some people were going up and down. Because I know some weeks some people will be up and then they weren't up like the rest of the season. They'd be back down too. And also just based on like a team need at the time. If somebody got hurt, they'll bring somebody up, things like that.
Okay.
Ron, on the wide receiver bubble, perhaps the most fascinating because it sounds like the Vikings are open to keeping 6 wide receivers instead of 5. Last year was 5. I think the year before it was 6. But on the bubble, well, let me say off the bubble are Justin Jefferson, KJ Osborne, Jordan Addison, and Jalen Naylor. I believe that's safe to say. And on the bubble, I think there's 5 guys: Jalen Reagor, Brandon Powell, N'Keal Harry, and Tristan Jackson. What's your thoughts on them, or did I forget somebody like Thayer Thomas?
I mean, I think the true bubble guys, yeah, would be, Naylor, or well, I would even say, yeah, Naylor, Rager, Harry, and Powell are fighting for those last
Okay.
three spots, I would say. And then if Naylor's healthy, I think Naylor showed enough last year on special teams alone where he has the upper hand because if you add that value as a gunner on special teams, anything you can contribute elsewhere as a wide receiver, I think is going to be valuable. But injury concerns are going to be the big thing with him because I don't even know what the injuries are. As I mentioned last week, I think N'Keal Harry, in a way, has an upper hand because his body type is so much different than any other receiver we have. It's always nice to have those, 6'3", 6'4", 230
Mhm.
pound wide receivers at the goal line that act like a tight end. But when you have Josh Oliver out there, do you need many of those type of guys? So I know Powell's been flashing in camp, and he also brings that punt return ability and the familiarity with KOC with the Rams. So I think six is a legitimate option that they're going to keep, mainly because of the special teams aspect of it.
Mhm.
If Naylor's healthy, he's a wide receiver and a special teamer, and then just like Powell, I don't know if he's going to be out there as a gunner, but he's a secure punt returner.
So do you have Jefferson, Osborne, Addison, Naylor? Do you think Harry and Powell instead of Rager?
I really think it'll be between Harry and Rager for that last spot.
Okay.
And the only reason I even say that with Harry is because he didn't have pads on last week, and
Yeah.
usually if you don't have pads on, like it's not because you're fighting for a roster spot. It's
Mhm.
so I don't know. Maybe it it's weird because obviously Harry and Rager both being first round picks recently, like so the talent's there. But is Harry just another Laquan Treadwell that looks the part, just can't seem to get it right on the field? Because when you've been through what this is the third team now in 3-4 years for him,
Mhm.
like that says something in its own right. So, and they didn't um, give the assets away. That granted, it wasn't a lot when they added Rager as well. So, at least what it looks like, they're all making. So it again, it doesn't look like it's like, oh, we got to keep this guy because like everyone else sucks. It's there. I think there's a legit competition, which is why there may be that extra spot taken there.
I've talked myself into six, trying to make a roster prediction. So I have Jefferson, Osborne, Addison, Naylor, Rager, and Powell. I think Rager has done enough this summer to change the narrative, and yeah, N'Keal Harry when he was signed, I was like, yeah, God, I don't even know. But then he changed my mind. I just don't know if he has the oomph to beat out Rager and Powell. But certainly, that's why we have in these roster bubble discussions. Sir, what
They
about?
bulk him up
Yep,
and let him be a tight end.
perfect. I think this might, in the light of two preseason games, this next guy, a tight end, is probably the ultimate roster bubble guy, and he's Nick Muse. Has he done enough, Ron, to convince the Vikings to keep four tight ends? Because we know T.J. Hockenson and Josh Oliver will get the 53-man nod, and then Kevin O'Connell called Johnny Munt the best TE3 in the country. So I don't see them cutting him after saying that. So does Muse make it a 4-man TE room?
I think it's very possible that he makes it because when he's given the opportunity, he's looked like he belongs. I think if he does make the squad, I think that may spell the end for CJ Ham. I don't see them keeping four tight ends and a fullback. It just roster flexibility. You kind of limit yourself in that, and it's not like you're keeping a Jimmy Kleinsasser around where he can play fullback, he can play tight end, and he's going to dominate at both of them. They're fringe guys, and I would think whoever shows more on special teams is gonna have the edge.
So you think Ham would be gone this year, or you mean down the road?
I think this year. I know they signed him to that extension, but
Mm.
I don't think there was any dead money really attached to that. And who knows if they still need to or whatever get their extensions done. I don't. I It just seems odd in this offense that they have a fullback that's making north of seven figures. I'm a big CJ Ham fan. He does nothing but perform when he's out there. It's just this offense isn't predicated on having a fullback. And to have a guy making, over seven figures that's part of 30% of the snaps or whatever it is, I think the tight end becomes more valuable because of those sets that they want to run.
Yeah, I was right there with you, but that was way back in January, February. I thought Ham would be the odd man out because they hardly used him on offense. But then they did sign him to the extension, and I think they'd be out like 1.5 million in dead money if they cut him now or cut him on Tuesday. But that would be a way indeed to keep four tight ends.
And it's also the fullback. They may have it lumped into the running back spot which is why instead of having four running backs and a fullback, maybe now we're just talking three running backs and that fullback with the extra wide receiver and tight end to be all be able to make the team.
On the offensive line, I think Vidarian Lowe, who was on this show a couple years ago now, or is that last year? No, it was last year.
He was a rookie last year.
Yep. Austin Schlottman and Blake Brandel. I think those guys are safe. They could be argued as bubble. I think the true bubble guys are, interestingly, the veterans, Oli Udoh and Chris Reed. Do you think, Raun, both of them make it, or do you think they're on the outside looking in?
I think Reed makes it because he showed last year that he has the position flexibility, and I think that's huge. Udoh may be the one that has the tougher road, being a veteran. That at this point, you're kind of. I feel like you are what you are, and at least if you have the younger guy in Vidarian Lowe, who they moved around last year, played him at both left tackle and right tackle. He has that flexibility, but he's also younger. Whereas Udoh, came off his rookie deal. They signed him to that. And again, a minimum type deal. But yeah, I think they're only going to keep 8 or 9 guys on the front. And I think that's smart in the sense that nowadays those 9 and 10 guys that are out there, they're not you're not hiding anyone. And if you need to replace someone for an injury throughout the year, I think there's a practice squad for that. And you're not going to get much of a drop off in talent. And you'd rather have guys that are out there, on the active 46, 47, whatever it is with quarterback that make more sense. Because I think even like Bryant, in your time, you guys only had like 8 linemen that were active, right? Like you didn't have the full 10.
It would be somewhere between 7 and 8, yeah.
Okay. And I mean, I still find it odd that you guys are playing every snap, and the only real injuries are like if someone gets rolled up on, but you usually see guys playing every snap, every single game, again, barring injury. And what is the course of action, say, if you're down, if you roll the dice and you have 7 or 8 guys that are on the line or that are active and you're down to only 4 healthy guys, does a tight end then come in and have to play offensive line?
No, somebody's going to have to suck it up and play through the injury.
So there's never any I mean, I guess with you guys with Kleintoster, it may have been a little different because he was like
he was never at least injured.
But okay.
Let's suck it up.
So, yeah, how many seasons was it, Bryant, when you've told us a couple of times you didn't even have a backup?
There was a couple, I mean, think about it, because Donald Penn left, it was there were a couple.
Yep, just you were it. Figure it out.
It's a testament to your just durability overall,
right,
and the talent gap.
That brings us to the defense, Raun, and I think I'll kind of lump the entire defensive line into one bubble. So the locks for the roster: Danielle Hunter, Marcus Davenport, Harrison Phillips, and Dean Lowry. And then I have likely to make, so these aren't bubble guys, although it's interpretive: Patrick Jones, Luigi Villain, DJ Wanham, Kyrus Tonga, Jonathan Buller might be bubble, Sazy from the Gophers, and Jaquelin Roy I consider probably going to make it. You feel free to disagree. And then I have on the bubble for sure Andre Carter and Ross Blacklock. What say you on the defensive line?
Honestly, I think the top 4 that you mentioned, I think that's accurate. The rest of it is so hard to dissect because of the scheme.
Yeah.
Whether the 3-4 or not necessarily just 3-4, but nose tackle versus 3 technique. Harrison Phillips obviously has that versatility where I think they have him as an end list or listed as an end, but to me he's more of a nose tackle because he's that beast, strong man in the middle. But those other guys like Dean Lowry, I like his length as a 3-4 end. Like I think isn't he like 6'6" and like 290? Just in
Mhm.
my mind, that perfect guy that you want to set that edge and eat up blockers. So Sheldon Day's intriguing because I know he comes from that San Francisco lineage, and he runs his defense. But I don't know if he's a nose or 3-4 end. I don't know enough about him there. And then I think Tonga. I think he's made the team. Like I think that's who they have pegged to be that. The Don Terry Poe in the middle. Just that. You just take on blockers and allow those undersized linebackers in Asamoah and Pace to be able to run around and do their thing. So, what they decide to do on the line, again, I have no idea because I don't know how they interpret the linebackers slash edge versus linemen. And again, I see certain players, whether it is Patrick Jones or the Gopher kid, their flexibility of being able to rush the passer, but also play as that 3-4 end. So I think once the cuts come through, I think that'll open a window as to what Flores really wants to do. But at this point, I have no idea because the Patriots are always that type of team where they say they run a 3-4, but they look like 4-3 at a lot of times. So you need just versatile guys that can do it all.
What'd you say about Andre Carter? Did I miss that?
Oh, I mean, I was a big fan of him coming into the draft, but I
Mhm.
don't know how raw he is. I
Mhm.
just love that size, the six
Yeah.
seven, whatever, 260, 270. In my mind, if he's able to be coached up, that he's that perfect guy that can play on the edge
Okay.
and as a 3-4 guy. I know, Bryant, your time with Baltimore, like Baltimore and Pittsburgh are the two teams that they do it extremely well. They always find guys to fill in a position. It doesn't matter who is gone, like whether it's Terrell Suggs leaves, someone else comes in, and they get extreme production out of that. Is that something
Mhm.
that Flores can unlock here with all these names that we as Vikings fans may not have heard of yet?
Oh, I think so. I think he probably has a good idea how to, run his scheme and what type of players he needs to fill in into those spaces. So yeah, I think so.
The next one, Ron, is intriguing, mainly because I talked to Josh Fry, who writes for Purple PTSD, a few hours ago, and on off-ball linebacker, he did some homework and realized that during Brian Flores's Dolphins stint, that there were one or two seasons where he only brought three off-ball linebackers into the regular season because he had so many damn secondary members, whether they're safeties. And kind of feels like we might be doing that again because of all these safeties that are, I think, shoo-ins to make the roster. But nevertheless, I consider locks at linebacker, Jordan Hicks, Brian Asamoah, and Ivan Pace, if you can believe that, as a lock. And then on the bubble is the two Troys, and Troy Dye and Troy Reeder. Do you think they keep a Troy or just roll with three off-ball linebackers?
I think one of the Troys. I think Reader has the upper hand. Again, those guys that are coming over from the Rams that KOC worked with over there. I think they
Mm-hmm.
have that kind of built in. Um, but man, I don't know because the way Pace has been playing and them using him as the green dot linebacker and kind of getting him ready to be a three down backer in this league, they may very well go the route of the extra safety because and play a lot of these big dime situations that we're doing with Bynum, with Scene, obviously
Mm-hmm.
Harry, and then even Metellus, has played well in spurts. So I honestly I have no way. This is the first time where I can legitimately say like out of the 53 man roster in my head, I could be wrong about 20 guys in a lot of different ways. And again, I think that's just the versatility of the Flores scheme, which I think all Vikings fans are going to be excited to see.
Yeah, it's usually, especially because we had Zimmer for 8 seasons, you could kind of tell at this time on the calendar who he'd probably keep, and certainly the format or the number at each position because we had so much sample. But now, from Donatel last year to Flores this year, it's kind of a guessing game, especially when you get as exotic as Flores likes to do things. At cornerback, the locks are Byron Murphy, a Caleb Evans, and Mekhi Blackman, in my opinion. And then likely to make the roster are Andrew Booth. I think he could be a lock too, depending on your perception of him, and Jawan Williams. And on the bubble, that leaves Najee Thompson. And he has been a preseason hero on special teams. So I ask you, kind sir, is Najee Thompson going to make this a 6-person cornerback CB room?
And Thompson's one where just watching film, watching the speed that they're playing at, it's hard to not have that guy make the squad just because of the work on special teams. And the way Ryan Wright has proven that he can boom the ball, he's almost like Mitch Berger like. If you're like, obviously Brian, I think you played with him, but he's always a guy that could kick the ball a long way with good hang time. We haven't had that for a long time. So in having that, you need someone that can go down and make a tackle. And he could very well push one of those other receivers off, or whatever that may be. So it's hard to, again, just watching him, you always see 36 down there making a play, always hitting the returner before before there's any room for him to go. So I think if it's a question of him as the sixth corner and special team guy or a fourth off ball linebacker, I think he gets the nod in my book.
Yeah, I don't think I'm looking it up. I don't think Bryant played with Mitch Berger. Does that name ring a bell, Bryant?
Mm-mm.
Oh, maybe that was.
Yeah, it was right before Bryant got
sworn
there.
that he was early 2000s punter.
No, they had Hodgepodge, Kyle
Cluey.
Richardson, Darren Bennett. It's kind of off on a tangent, and then Cluey. I'm sure he remembers Cluey.
Yeah, I remember Cluey for sure.
Was he a pretty cool dude?
Yeah, Cluey was cool.
Yeah. Yep. And then I think Ron Cluey locked it down for how many years? That ended up
He was here for a while, yeah.
Yeah, that ended up being so he got there in 2005, and then he was there for 8 seasons altogether. So that's the punter lesson of the day. All right, and then the final option or the final section of the depth chart is, because there won't be any battles anymore at kicker. Greg Joseph won that outright. If you're just getting back into the swing of Vikings football, is safety. Although I don't really think there's anybody on the bubble. You let me know if I'm wrong here, Ron. Harrison Smith, Lewis Seen, Josh Metellus, Cameron Bynum, Jay Ward, and Theo Jackson. I think Jackson is probably a practice squatter. I think the rest of the guys flat out make it. Am I wrong?
I tend to agree with you on that. Again, Metellus has the ability to play special teams at a pretty high level. And the other guys either have the draft capital or versatility that, Jay Ward being that guy that can play nickel, can play safety. So I think they do all make the squad. But how they're used, I guess we'll find out. So, and that's the one thing, even kind of going back a position group with Booth. I think Booth being in his second year from the group that drafted him in their first class, I think he is a lock this year. Now, if he makes it through the year, that's another thing. And then Bryant, as a player, from your perspective, going through this, obviously the cut downs are a lot different now, going straight from 90 to 53, whereas your time it was slowly going down. Is there ever a time when, like, let's say players can have a say or make a swing vote as being a leader on the team, like this guy should make the squad because of his
No, because we don't even know
contribution,
unless you go in there like Anthony Herrera and talk your way into staying on the team. Other than that, we have no idea who they're going to or who they plan on releasing. So no, we're not even, and then we're never there. We're never in the building. Especially like this last day, you're at home on break. So that's when like people get called in. So we're not even around. So you don't know until you just come back in the locker room and you see who makes it. So like I said, unless they do Anthony Herrera and he got caught up to get released and he talks his way in the stand.
So then
that makes me
the other
wonder.
part of that is
That makes me wonder who did they release in the place of him? Since he talked his way in the stand.
right. So the other part of that is you said like the way cuts are. Is it like obviously there's a deadline for them, but like would you be in the building like having lunch or something like with someone and they get called in and then they got to go and like what's that
Well, the old
process
way you
like of
used to when it was like 3 different cuts, you would like you'd be there definitely for like the first maybe 1 or 2. The third one was always like leading up to like Labor Day weekend or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
We were probably off or something, so we weren't never there for the last one. So I'm pretty sure this last one they're probably gonna be off, and people will be at home, and they have like a couple of days off, and they'll make calls then.
What about just we're talking through it out loud. So a guy like yourself, starting left tackle for a decade almost for the Vikings, or somebody on the current team like Jefferson or Hawkinson, do they even like get a notification that they made the team? Like, or is it just so?
No, if you get a
notification
that you didn't make it, that's like
Okay. All right, fair enough. Well, yeah, because it would be a little awkward if they, called up Justin Jefferson
That's
Monday.
too many phone calls to call everybody who made it too. It's like we're just going to call the people who didn't make it, call them in, and if you didn't get a phone call, then that means you made it.
Yeah, I see.
so that Bryant, what's
So
the
there's a
mindset
certain
like?
time after a certain time, if you didn't get a call, then it's like okay, I made the team.
Yeah.
So what's the mindset like for a player like of your caliber where, highly recruited, highly, high level at college, highly drafted, like always have that stability of knowing where you're at on the team. Like how does your mindset like change knowing that you're a player that is a lock to make the team? Like is there I guess you don't know anything other than that, but is there either a sense of security or safety or just kind of I just know I need to get through camp healthy and I'm fine? Or is
Get
there
through camp healthy and like
any other things you're worried about?
To me, I feel like long as I remain the starter during like camp and those preseason games, that I should definitely make the team. So yeah, I can see me starting off through training camp and all of a sudden they tell me you didn't make it. Like I'll be like, what? Like that'd be crazy.
But that's happened we've had players that the surprise cuts that like Brian Robinson, for example, a few years back, where he was the starter, came in, and all of a sudden he gets cut. But I guess, yeah, like I said, you probably have no idea what like any of the other side of the coin on that because of how great your run was from college and to retirement.
Yeah.
Yeah, in a very good way. Bryant is the wrong guy to ask about what's it like to sweat a roster bubble.
I've never seen, so I didn't even know that happened to Brian Robinson, but I wouldn't expect somebody. So he started all the preseason games and everything, and then got released.
I think it was the one where it was just a big surprise because he was penciled in as that starter, and I don't think that anyone was ready to. It was his last year. Like he was, I mean, what 9 years in. So I think but it came as I think that's the only one I could think of that came as a true shock. That whoa, maybe Alex Boone was the other one, but from everything I've heard, like about Alex Boone was not glowing.
Yeah, so last year we had 2 surprise cuts, and we'll end on this note for the show. Last year was Armon Watts and Ihmir Smith-Marsette, and this year's equivalent. Now, I don't think these next 2 guys will be cut, but this year's equivalent would be like Jalen Naylor and Khyiris Tonga out of nowhere were cut, and we'd all be like, "What?" And now it's easy to look back and be like, oh, yeah, Ihmir Smith-Marsette and Armon Watts got cut because we know it. But at the time, it was really head-scratching because they were both – Watts was listed as a starter on the first depth chart, and then Ihmir Smith-Marsette was everybody's WR4 pick. Well, they traded for Reagor, and then for some reason they just said no thanks to Watts. So that gets it's a cautionary tale in the next 5 days just to beware that there will be a couple surprise cuts, but maybe we've talked them to death enough that nothing will be a surprise. All right, gentlemen, we'll be back next Wednesday. I think Sawh will be back in the saddle, and we will have all of the preseason behind us. We will have a new depth chart with 53 players on it to dissect. All right.
Okay.
All right, you guys have a wonderful week.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, later.